Hey, we're live. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 188. I don't have a title yet, but it's probably going to be like everyone's on vacation or something like that, because literally everyone's on vacation. Not too much security news has happened, just a lot of security people yelling at clouds. So we'll try and recap some more from DEF CON and move on. But you notice we didn't record last week because it's busy. It's going to be busy for the next few weeks anyway. So we're putting them out. Just hang with us. We'll get back to our routine, I don't know, in a few weeks. Again, I'm Haim Cohen, to those people who want to know who I am. Tom is there. Tom. Oh, muted. You're still muted.
Well then, apparently I don't know how to use a mute button. Hello everyone.
Okay. Again, we should mention our names at the beginning. Anyway, so we have 3 sort of oldish stories. We'll start with the oldest one. So at DEF CON, there was Checkpoint Security put out a blog post on how they can hijack HP fax machine all-in-one type printers. And you may say, who uses faxes? But we'll get there. Basically, you can craft a fax and you can send it, and from there it can hijack the machine. Now, I don't know who decided to figure this out, but again, I guess OCR, all that cool stuff, they figured out a way to exploit this.
Oh my god, I am just the worst with this mute button today. So fax machines use a specific protocol to actually interpret the data that comes through the line. So all that, like the loud screaming fax noise that you all are familiar with, that's actually data encoded in a specific way. And a fax machine has to essentially use an interpreter to unpack that data and turn it into, black and white or grayscale dots on a page to render your fax. And interpreters are hard. They're difficult to write. They're super difficult to secure. And we've seen this a lot. It's actually a pretty common problem. If you give an interpreter really bad data that it wasn't expecting, especially super well-crafted data, you can actually bomb out that interpreter and use it, as an exploit. Use it to make the interpreter do things it wouldn't normally do, or give you access it shouldn't have access to give.
So let's get back to the initial question. I know I don't use a fax machine. I don't think Tom uses a fax machine.
I actually do, but very rarely.
I mean, I know where to get a fax machine, but the legal industry, my wife does use a fax machine extensively. She wishes that she didn't have to. Real estate professionals still use fax machines, even though it is a lot of it is now moving digitally. But the thing that surprised me the most is because obviously America first, is that the countries with symbols, Chinese, Japanese, use more fax machines because they can't get the alphabet the right way, and it's just easier to write it and send it over. That's what I'm seeing here.
So you're right. Law firms use faxes a ton. Hospitals use faxes everywhere all the time. If you need to get anything done in a hospital, chances are a fax machine is the way to go. I've actually had to deal with some apartment complexes through fax machines, as far as faxing over documents or signed, forms, applications, stuff like that. It's not super common with apartment complexes today, but the healthcare industry is all faxes all the time. So while this isn't really a problem for your average home network, for big corporate networks, oh yeah, it's absolutely a thing.
So first off, if you have one of these if you have an HP fax machine, this is for HP. I'm putting the exploit, the way to mitigate this, in the show notes. But you know what? If you're not using the fax machine, disconnect it. I mean, if you're like me,
fix.
Yeah, just disconnect it. I mean, the first thing to do is apply the fix if you know how to do it and everything else. But if you can't do that, like we told you, just disable the fax machine part. So just disconnect it from your wall, the RJ11 port, because I mean, if you're not using it, you're not using it. So when you need to send a fax, then you know what? Plug it back in and go that way. That's the simplest fix. I guess
if you're a business and you have one of these all-in-one multi-function devices, It might be worth it if you can't update the device, if it's out of support, if you don't have a support contract with your vendor. It might be worth it just to get, a cheap old plain fax machine and plug that in and use that as the fax component and unhook the POTS line from your multifunction device. So at least the fax line isn't directly connected to something that has access to your network.
It's one of those things. I don't know how somebody decided, let's play with fax machines, but I guess you're right. Somebody said, you know what, let's see what interpreters we can find and let's see how we can exploit them. And I thought fax machines were on the way out, but people obviously still use them, like you said. So this is not going to end tomorrow. This is going to take a long process. They're just probably, IT is probably just now getting the details on how to fix it. They're saying HP, but this is probably for all of them. I don't have an HP, but I'm also not connected as a fax machine. But that the others are probably affected, and we just have to wait for solutions at this point.
Yeah, with these interpreters, usually they're either licensed. I want to say for this one in particular, I think HP wrote it, and a lot of companies license that tech from HP to use it in their own machines. So it's not just HP that's affected. It's a lot of companies. Again, I could be wrong on the details there, but many models are affected by this. And keep an eye out for updates if you can't go without the fax machine for some reason.
I mean, I think the more important thing is it's not just the fax machine. Anytime you deal with an interpreter, something that's taking and interpreting something else, it has problems with exploits, and people are trying to find it. And the problem is that everyone wants to make code easier to write, easier to do, but you're using an interpreter and you have to watch for all that. Who would have thought that they would have sent these malicious characters being interpreted and hijacking the network? So they have to patch it and fix it. And the problem, like we keep on saying, is that the industries using fax machines are not quick to patch. We talked about hospitals still using XP because the MRI machine still uses XP. They're not going to replace that. So they have to make sure everything works. Everything is mission critical. So it takes a while. And in that time, it's a problem.
Yeah, it's definitely not an easy overnight fix. And that's why I suggest maybe, if you are a law firm, if you are, small enough to be running, your own office or doing IT for your clinic, it might be worth it just to get a standalone fax machine and not use the fax on the multifunction device that's also hooked to Ethernet, right? Just hook up the stupid fax machine that you bought somewhere, maybe get just a dedicated machine and plug it into the phone line, and then leave the multifunction stuff to the multifunction device without the fax.
Or lastly, this is the right answer. See if you can move your business away from fax machines if you're small enough. I don't know how that is.
Yeah. The medical industry is particularly hard because of the HIPAA rules.
Correct.
Email. Some of the, patient, like the actual customer or patient medical records software will do secure HIPAA compliant messaging that you can use to kind of upend around the need to have faxes, but it doesn't fix your interaction with other service providers like pharmacies, insurance companies. A lot of these places still rely on fax for intercompany communication, which is really unfortunate. We should have found something better by now. We should have moved to something better by now.
I mean, there should be one-click scan email type thing, but not yet. So they're getting there, but it's still going to be a while. So if you have a fax machine, just pay attention to this. Okay, the next thing we have is, so remember we talked about net neutrality back in January, and it was a big deal, and Ajit was going to dismantle it and everything else, and it happened. Well, he said that the FCC website was hacked. That's not exactly true. We were going to talk about this last week, and he said that, but turns out that the John Oliver show caused it. People actually wanting to voice their complaints actually brought down the site. So it wasn't a malicious DDoS attack. It was a good guy DDoS attack, and it caused them to, Ars Technica is reporting, lie to Congress, but who knows? Yeah.
So according to the story, the site was under a DDoS attack, but it wasn't an attack. It was, they literally went down because too many people were trying to use the site as it was intended to be used. Remember when Twitter was going down like all the time years and years ago because too many people were tweeting and using Twitter at the same time? It's basically what happened to the FCC. They were insufficiently scaled and their site just fell over. It happens when you get a huge influx of users. But you know what Twitter didn't do after they went down? They didn't go to Congress and then lie about it being a malicious attack. Twitter just said, yep, we're trying to scale and it's hard. The FCC just went, oh my God, we're under attack. Somebody's attacking us. It's totally not because people want to protect net neutrality at all. We promise. So, yep.
And to pivot away from that just a little bit. So I think we're done with that. But I asked somebody who knows more about net neutrality than me. It was Stacey Higginbotham. She runs her own IoT type podcast. But I asked her, she worked for GigaOM, and I asked her, is the wildfires in California, and I'll get to that story in a second, was that a net neutrality issue? And the answer is no, but maybe. So if you don't know what we're talking about, there's wildfires in California, just like every year. One of the local fire departments got from Verizon, quote unquote, unlimited service. And they said, is this unlimited? Verizon said, yes. Are you going to throttle us? No, but maybe. And they said, no. How do we not provide? We cannot have throttle. Okay, we won't throttle you. You're essential personnel, all this and that. They're fighting the wildfires and they're calling Verizon. How come our data is slow? We don't know why. Are you throttling us? You said you were. Well, you didn't pay this fee. And they're like, just undo it. Just get it done now. Well, not until you clear it with the town and this and that. And it was a big problem. And the question is that a violation of net neutrality? Everyone says yes, but it's not exactly a yes or no answer.
So personally, I do not believe this is a net neutrality issue because they were throttling, as far as I understand it, and I could be wrong here, they were throttling all traffic. They were treating the packets equally. They were throttling everything equally. They were equally discriminating against their data in all regards and all of their data, right?
So I'll read the thread of tweets. It's just three of them. Throttling, even if there's no network congestion, is anti-consumer, but I wouldn't call it a net neutrality issue. I suppose if you think of it as discriminating against packets based on plan type, it could be, but the FCC has never stepped into plan pricing, nor would it. Two, and since we have no public safety network, which was called for after 9/11, we probably should have separate rules and plans for first responders that provide what they need when they need it. Third one, in that case, the carrier could be well within the right to discriminate against your Fortnite packets if you're on the same tower as a firefighter trying to put out a fire. So basically, it's anti-consumer, but they are, like you said, they're throttling all packets equally. And we should have done our public safety network, which we didn't do. So there's a lot of problems here, but I agree. I don't think it was net neutral, but California is going to sue and try to get it to be a net neutrality issue.
I do not disagree that there is absolutely a problem here. Should the firefighters' data have been throttled? No, absolutely not. These are people literally putting their lives on the line to protect people, to protect property, to put out wildfires in California. I mean, these are literal heroes going in to do this job when no one else will. We absolutely should not be throttling their data at the very least. But is it a net neutrality issue? I don't believe so. Having a first responders network and a public service network for these types of things, that's probably the best answer. I don't think it's the most realistic. I don't think we'll get there. For funding, the current administration, there's a lot of reasons why setting up a public network or infrastructure project right now is probably not going to happen. It's probably the best answer, but I wouldn't count on it. Now, working with cell carriers to do maybe a Google Project Fi sort of thing where they can have, a device that can roam on any network they please. And the carriers themselves, get government subsidies for enabling this on their towers. That could be another answer. There's clearly a problem here, clearly something that needs to be fixed, but I don't think it's a net neutrality issue.
And again, and that's the problem. Net neutrality is such a hard topic to discuss because there's so many different issues here, is that people want to say something, but they really don't know. And I think it's a simple concept to understand, but to explain it to people and to fit everything into that checkbox is really hard. And again, what happens if the firefighters were like, I don't understand how much data are firefighters using. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking they're obviously communicating with each other. They're GPS mapping, I guess, but
it could be mapping. They could be taking photos and video of the fire, of progression, of their current status. They could be on a voice-to-voice data link conference call with optional video feeds. Like there's a lot of things that you could be doing as a firefighter in a wildfire situation that could eat up a lot of data. I have no knowledge of it, but I can almost guarantee that they're not out there like while the fire is burning next to them, like streaming Game of Thrones or something. Like they're out there doing their job. It's not like they're watching Netflix or something. So if the firefighters need data, we should give them the data.
Absolutely. Or at least if they're running low on data, find out what's going on, what's this, what's that. And apparently they were in communication. They did get throttled. They did call, and Verizon says it's a customer service issue. Now imagine again, your house was burned down because of a customer service issue that we're going to now train our staff on. It's kind of a problem. So whether it is or is not a net neutrality issue, I think we can all agree that first responders somewhat deserve not to be throttled. Agreed.
If we're gonna throttle anyone, firefighters should probably be pretty low on that list of people you're gonna throttle.
So that came up last week. Next thing, we talked about this 2 weeks ago. Fortnite Exploit. So we told you that we didn't buy into that Fortnite was releasing on the Play Store to bypass the Google Play Store because they wanted openness. They really wanted to save the money, and we said how this is a really bad idea. Well, I think it took less than 24 hours, less than a week, definitely, and we have our first exploit that goes through the installer.
Yeah, so the Fortnite installer can be made to install arbitrary APKs, and anyone can force it to do that. So, whoops. Google's security team did discover this and did let Epic know. And once Epic had a fix out, Google made it public like they do. And Epic was very angry about that.
Because it was, they didn't get the customary 90 days. Because there's an active exploit. It was in the wild. They told them it was fixed, but Epic kind of wanted a little more time. And Google basically said, you know what? You should have put this in the App Store, and this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, people think this is a kind of Google strong-arming Epic into the App Store, and I don't think that was the case, right? If it's an active exploit, you don't get the 90-day window. I honestly don't feel bad for Epic on this one. They did do this out of greed. Everyone knows it. They didn't do this to get closer to their customers or to be more open. And they put out something that had a vulnerability, right? Yeah, I don't feel bad for them at all. And also, I have installed Fortnite on my Android phone. I have tried to play it. It's an awful experience being outside of the Play Store because the thing doesn't get automatic updates. Every time I want to play Fortnite, it's literally 15 to 20 minutes of me pulling and installing updates to just be able to play one 3-minute match because I'm terrible at the game. And I honestly, I literally sat my phone down next to me while it was running the Fortnite updates, picked up my Nintendo Switch and played Fortnite on that instead because it was faster. It's just not a good experience, regardless of security implication.
And how big is each update?
Oh man, I'm getting each update I pull is at least 400 megs. The first one I had to pull was 2 gigs. It was insanity.
So if you're doing this, now I don't know what the carriers say, but are you allowed to pull 2 gigs down on LTE?
I've got an unlimited plan, so yes. And thank you, T-Mobile, for my actual unlimited plan.
Well, it's not actually unlimited. It's 30, 40 gigs, but
yeah, before throttling, it's still unlimited. It's just 40 gigs of full speed, and then they start throttling. But I find it hard to use 40 gigs on a cell network.
I mean, we were talking to people when we were at I/O that were literally using Verizon or T-Mobile as their ISP. But for us, we have bandwidth. It's so 40 gigs for us is not a big deal. But no, the App Store will not let you download files of a certain size. So you can't download, I think it's 100 megs, more than 100 megs or 200 megs on data, unless you disable the check and everything else. But updates, I don't know if you can do updates via data that are that big. I mean,
and I know like Fortnite is not a small game, right? And the Google Play Store has got plenty of large games in it. They could work with Google to enable these big updates. They could say, okay, let's make sure it's Wi-Fi only. Let's make sure it's automatic. So when I click the Fortnite icon on my phone, I can just jump in and play a game, and it doesn't take me 20 minutes to get to that point.
I think
totally not security related. I'm just an angry gamer like the rest of angry gamers.
I think they should copyright the Fortnite dance. And if you go on YouTube, make them pay for it. I mean, if you're really money grubbing, if you're going to do the Fortnite dance, I think you should have to pay for it.
But Fortnite stole those dances from everywhere else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's as much as I know about Fortnite.
I'm preaching the word. Fortnite did not invent these dances.
All right, last thing, we got less than 10 minutes. Tom put in here the Stalking app got hacked. So I'll let Tom talk about that, and I'll talk about how you shouldn't watch your kids using these apps.
So there are a bunch of shady companies out there that will sell you surveillance applications that you can install surreptitiously on your child's phone or your spouse's phone if you are a really bad spouse. And they're advertised as protection or making sure you know what your teenager's up to. It sends you screenshots, copies of their text messages, copies of their photo roll or whatever they any pictures they take on their camera. Like these apps are quite literally spyware that you install on other people's phones so you can keep tabs on them. They're super shady. It's super not the right thing to do. If you're a parent, I think you should parent your child, not spy on your child. But this is not a parenting show. This is not parenting in 30. It's security in 30. So what happens is that you install an app like this. That person has all of their private information, their personal life logged up, recorded, uploaded to some shady third-party server or third-party website. And then that website gets breached. And you have now not only compromised their privacy yourself, you have now compromised their privacy to the entire internet because, that site was totally insecure and was totally leaking the details of everything they had on these people.
And if your child is under 18, they're probably not, is it FERPA compliant or COPPA compliant, which is another issue. They probably don't agree with GDPR and a whole bunch of other issues, but that's the main thing. And look, I've spoken to my students about it where their parents say this, they have to do this. And I tell my students, that's a problem. And they go, but our parents tell us your choice is phone with this or no phone. And they'll say, fine, whatever. They'll give in. And the problem is that you're hurting the child. The parent, you are absolutely hurting the child. Their information is getting stolen. All this data, their photos are going out there. And if they are doing bad photos, those bad photos are now going out there. So it's one of those things. Let's parent first. And I say this with a 5-year-old who I do watch the YouTube videos with him. Some of them are a little weird, and you have to go through their history and everything else. But I think it's important to talk to them about good security habits and everything else. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. You know what? Talking to them will absolutely help them out. They are listening. So again, not parenting, just, you know what? Don't just assume that they're going to do good. Just ask them, hey, can you not take these bad photos? This is why. And show them. It's a bonding experience. They'll listen. Trust me.
Yeah, so Sophos writes on their Naked Security blog that this app was reverse engineered. Turns out that they're using IDs as a parameter, a query parameter in their web queries, which returned customer usernames and passwords in plain text. because that's what you need in spyware is plain text usernames and passwords. And they wrote a quick script, grabbed 10,000 login credentials, got access to pictures, audio recordings, location information, text messages, and everything else from the victims' phones. So this is not like the person who installed it on the phone. It was the person who had their phone, the spyware attached to them. So it's not even that the bad guys were affected by this. It was the actual victims of the spyware being further exploited by a really shady website having really bad security. So there's no upside to this at all. Don't use these apps. Don't give any money to these people. Don't give any credence to these people. We're not even naming names on this show because I don't want to give this app any more popularity or any free advertisement. These things are commonly used by domestic abusers and stalkers to keep eyes on victims, and it's shady, it's reprehensible, and it should absolutely be illegal.
Now, if you are one of these, you can now use the free Experian child identity theft scan, which is apparently free for one time, to see if your information or your child's information is on the dark web. So once you did all this reprehensible stuff, you can now leak your information to Experian and they can use it for whatever else. I saw that commercial the other day and I said, this is so simply solved by just talking to your kids and just not signing up for stuff. This is not a hard thing to do. This is good parenting. Talk to your kids. Show them the DEF CON videos. Find one of the really cool DEF CON videos. Show them how easy it is to unlock a lock or any of this. I'm sure they will actually enjoy it and say, look, can you just not do this? Or show how easy it is. Get them a Wi-Fi pineapple and let them play with it. It's just that simple.
But I mean, you're a parent. You understand that conversations are difficult. Installing spyware is easy.
Yes. The problem. So, like I said, my son does have a tablet, and yes, once a week or so, I go through and I see what he's watching, and if there's anything I need to block, like because we're not allowing SpongeBob in the house. We are a SpongeBob free house. We don't allow that and we block it. And he says, why? And we explain to him, we don't need silly, we need smart. So look, it's the problem is, yes, when you're a teenager and your kids hate you and I do teach teenagers and they do complain about this. I try to explain to them and I get the nobody cares. I have nothing to hide, all that other stuff. It's a hard thing to do, but with teenagers, everything is hard. There's nothing easy with teenagers. So the best thing you can do is just try to model it yourself. Don't go on Facebook sharing every single photo. Explain to them, hey, do you know where that's going? Who is that sharing with? All that other stuff. And they will listen. As much as you don't think they will, they will listen.
And you can have the conversation about moving their social network, their social circle to a bit more decentralized application or a bit more, secured experience, right? So if a teenager moved their social network to a Signal group chat, that'd be great. If they moved it to a WhatsApp group chat, that'd be great too. Honestly, my social network, when I got out of college, moved from Facebook to a group chat.
I think it's everybody.
Anything. Yeah,
I think that's a sign of the times because it was email chat. It was it used to be a Hangout
MySpace.
chat.
Well, it used to be MySpace. Long time ago. Pre-Facebook. If you can imagine a time before Facebook, there was this thing called MySpace. I had my top 8.
And Tom was an awesome guy. He didn't sell your data. He didn't put fake news in there. It was just
his security was awful though. Like admin pages were fully exposed on the internet, no authentication, really horrible stuff. But okay website for the time.
So anyway, with that said, I think we're going to end it. Like I said, the best thing to get a hold of us in the next few weeks is probably the WhatsApp chat group. Just at in30 on Twitter, ask us in, find a way to ask us. We'll get you right in. We'll keep on talking, but just we're here. It's just going to be a little busy couple of weeks. So we'll see everyone hopefully soon.
See everyone.